Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a look at the 1983 film Cujo. This is episode 428. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Savaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Nope, nothing wrong there.
Nothing wrong here. Good golly. I can't believe that made it all the way into the movie. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary, whatever that means, from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello. I
Hello.
comment in colors.
At this point, you're an expert. Like, you could be put on the stand.
We've been over this. I don't remember anything, so I'm never going to be an expert.
You're an expert. I promise you. If because you could be put on the stand in a criminal trial as an expert on horror movies.
Nah.
That's the
No way.
amazing thing. Yes. Because
way.
all I have to do is show what's the test? I have to show like a habitual use and
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
Okay. It could.
Man, I want to be in a trial where I'm an expert witness.
Yep.
But doesn't that sound great? Like, for some reason, you're sworn in as an expert on horror movies. Like, what could be the crime? Like, what the hell is this trial where they?
It would be a stupid copyright thing where it's like, no, I did not steal their idea. This is normal for horror movies, and then they'd be like,
or it could be a crime where somebody
It's the next Scream sequel. It's
right.
It's the trial of Ghostface.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
If somebody was doing a Ghostface kind of thing, but you needed an expert to come on and establish that there is a thing called Ghostface and that this guy is clearly patterned after it, you would need to introduce an expert to do that.
And that there are certain rules to surviving a scary movie.
Yes.
I literally just referenced that last night. That's so funny.
Yes. Even though, again, I do find those rules problematic. But, okay, Cujo is and what kind of name is Cujo? I do want to see if there is.
Cujo. I have a thing, but go ahead.
Okay, Cujo is a 1983 American horror film based on Stephen King's 1981 novel of the same name, a novel that he says he does not remember writing, and directed by Louis Teague. It was written by Don Carlos Dunaway and Barbara Turner using the pen name Lauren Currier. And it starred Dee Wallace, Daniel Hugh Kelly, and the really amazing child actor Denny Pintaro. The film follows a mother and her son who are trapped inside their Pinto while protecting themselves from a rabid Saint Bernard. I don't mean to laugh at the notion of a scary Saint Bernard is so funny, and I think that's one of the things for us to discuss is how you get horror out of concepts that sound questionable when you say them out loud. I think that's part of Stephen King's magic. So, okay, let's get our opening.
I just also feel like we should point out that it is Louis Teague of Alligator fame.
Oh, that's right. That's an excellent point. Wow, I apologize. I hadn't even thought of that. All right. And in fact, let's get our opening thoughts from Drew, Julia, and then Tony, and then I'll go. So, Drew, what are your opening thoughts about Cujo?
I have a weird connection to the both the book and the film because when I was in high school, my nickname actually for a while was in fact Cujo because I had gotten in a fight with a particular member of the football team, and he tried to use his heavier weight against me. So I bit him, and the part of his body or the flesh that I bit him on actually later apparently turned black and fell off. Thus, around my high school, I was then known for being ill-tempered like a rabid dog and thus was christened Cujo. And I being the teenage miscreant that I was, embraced that for a while. But the movie itself,
I just want to
bringing it.
give proper respect to the fact that that was a crazy story. That was really crazy.
I've been holding on to it until we
That's I
actually
just want
did
to
that.
appreciate that you think this is a safe enough space to share that, and I appreciate that. And
With the three of y'all and the entire internet.
we hear you, and we appreciate you, and thank you. Yes. Okay, continue.
Cujo, not exactly the sort of animal attack movies that we have been watching. I wouldn't really call this an eco horror. It's definitely, even though it is an animal attack movie, I would say that this is more part of the first wave of Stephen King adaptations instead of the sort of creature feature movies that came out in the wake of Jaws. And what exactly that means, we will get into, I'm sure. I do think that this is probably the most frightening movie we've watched as part of this set. It's something very upsetting about the latter half of this movie in a very visceral way, to see such a big friendly dog turn into a gore encrusted monster, and just the way that it terrorizes woman and child it's pretty. It's, you talk about a movie being a horror movie, I mean, that's definitely horrifying stuff.
Yeah.
At least that's my reaction to it. It's been a minute since I actually sat down and watched the movie, and in fact, upon rewatching this, I actually found that I remembered the book a bit better, despite only reading it once when I was in junior high. So I remembered very vividly that there were actually whole scenes from the perspective of the dog, which is not something you could really pull off on film. But I do think that this is a good adaptation, and I do think it's suitably terrifying. At least I found it to be. So I'll be interested to know what everybody else thought about it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Julia. So you said you also read this book, and what were your thoughts going back to this movie?
Yeah, we had a bunch of Stephen King books around my house when I was young, so this was definitely one that I remember being terrified by. This one and Firestarter for some reason stand out. But I suggested this because I couldn't believe we hadn't done it yet. I was like, this is a good this is a
Yeah.
good Stephen King movie. I wanted to follow up a couple of things you mentioned in the opening. First of all, you said that Lauren Currier was the screenwriter. She's actually the mother. I don't think you mentioned she's the mother of Jennifer Jason Lee. I don't know if you
No, I
knew
didn't,
that
and that's a
or
good
mentioned it.
wow.
And then the name, let me see here. I want to find this in the IMDb because you were asking about that. It's Stephen King. Okay, so it says a rumor had circulated that Cujo was an ancient Indian word meaning unstoppable force. In reality, Stephen King named the dog after the code name of William Lawton Wolfe, one of the founders of the Symbionese Liberation Army. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. Wolf's code name was actually spelled Cajo, which was misreported by the media as Cujo. So just super random origin for
Oh,
that name. Of course, in Spanish, it's pronounced Cujo, so that's how they would have said it there. But anyway, I found this movie really well. I found it starting out to be kind of slow, and I didn't love I didn't love the subplot about all the marriage difficulties and all that. But once they get into the actual, horror part, which is where they've come, mother and son, Danny Pintaro of Who's the Boss fame and Dee Wallace of All the Things, have managed to bring their falling apart car to the home of the mechanic, or the property of the mechanic, but the mechanic's not there. He wasn't expecting them. Nobody's there. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's there. He's dead.
yeah.
But anyway, there's nobody there that's alive, and except for this dog and the rabbit dog. And so at that point, once you've got them, they can't get their car started again. All the things are happening. It's terrifying. And as a mother, it is doubly terrifying. Like the idea that you're trying to survive and also save your kid. And I just think they both did an amazing job. I mean, I just thought they were so good. And she talks about how hard it was and how she's really proud of the work, but she said that, and she ended up having to go into like 3 weeks of emotional being treated for exhaustion because of all the
Mm.
how hard it was, and that she's like she shot her adrenals and has never recovered from that. So basically, it was just like she put everything into it for real. And Danny Ventura was just amazing as well. I mean, he really seemed like he was terrified. The doggos were amazing. Poor Saint Bernards after this movie, they became way less popular. So,
Mm.
anyway, so I just thought that whole thing was great. The whole first part I could take or leave, really a lot of it, but that all of the stuff with the Pinto and
Mm.
the humans and the dogs were amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Uh, and you've given some stuff to go back to. Tony, what would you add to that?
Yeah, this movie's actually really harrowing. Like
Yes.
I had forgotten because I mean, it's the makeup that they do on our Saint Bernard is also terrifying.
Yeah.
Goopy and just like whoa. Now you'd probably do it with like a CG swap out for a bunch of it, but I'm glad they didn't. I mean, there was no way to do it at the time, of course, but like that visceral nature of things. And yeah, I mean, I can imagine as a parent, like I was watching it going, oh, this is not a good for parents movie at all.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting what they kept from the book and what they did, like the advertising stuff. Something else that was also strange to me is I had forgotten the Jaguar that
That is
our
a
dad
gorgeous
drives.
car.
That my grandfather had one that he bought and would take. It was his Sunday his he and my grandmother's Sunday drive car. So I'd actually ridden in one of those XKEs for a bunch of times. It was strange. I'd totally forgotten that bit. I think when he passed, it was supposed to go to me, but by that time it was. I mean, keeping a Jaguar running, like it's going to take a lot more than that. The shade tree mechanic we have.
Mm-hmm.
Those cars are not there's a lot of maintenance involved in them. Which is kind of funny that they're out in this area. Like, hey, I'm
Yes.
gonna just keep this car around. That is a high maintenance vehicle. Beautiful car though. But yeah, I had forgotten just how terrifying it's definitely not. We've definitely gone straight into animals attack and we're firmly out of eco terror land.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot going on. It's the setup is actually fairly simple, but in the same way we eventually get like movies like Phone Booth or whatever, like how do you make that terrifying throughout? And I think they did a pretty good job.
Thank you. That's really the question. I mean, I'm of two minds about it. I like the way the movie is, and I like the way the book is, but in a sense, the horror part of it. So there's deep human drama going on, and that's engaging. And King has done his best, basically. And I'm going to talk as though King is making this movie because with a few very notable exceptions, the movie feels pretty close to the book. But
Well, and even the exceptions, Stephen King was a fan of, like the end. He
right.
actually wished he had done the end that way instead of the way.
That's really
was
interesting
Yeah.
that he would say that. And yeah, so but there's clear I'm torn because in the one hand I think it's truly padding. Like we've added a lot of human drama because we want to take our time getting to the what they call in Hollywood the promise of the premise, which is somebody being hunted by a rabid dog. We take a real long time to get around to that, and until then, it's basically something else that Stephen King is very comfortable in, which is just domestic drama. And as long as that's interesting to us, then it's fine. But this is one of those cases where, in a lot of horror movies, if you've got a lot of domestic drama, you nevertheless are going to keep cutting back to whatever the bad guy's doing. But that doesn't happen here because Cujo takes a good long time to become really dangerous. Up until then, he's just sick. So it's just more basic drama. And I mean, it's kind of a high wire act. It's sort of impressive that it's as good as it is. But I think this is the one thing that people, when you ask them, hey, what did you think of Cujo? A lot of their main complaints is, well, in the end, it's a story about a dog. And I felt like like we didn't, there's only so much story that's the central story, and the rest is padding it out to feature length. Is that too harsh? Is that fair? Or completely unfair?
I only say it's unfair because I have seen you give other movies a pass that are languid in
Yes.
their approach to getting to the horror. So this movie doesn't have any sins in it that aren't in other movies that you
That's for
have
sure.
enjoyed.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I love. So let's talk about one of the things that Stephen King is really good at. I think, but more than anybody else, probably of his era, at least in the popular culture, is showing us our world, like reflecting it back to us. And he's got some prejudices, which we'll get to, but that there's this word that TV tropes uses about Stephen King, which is mundanger, that he brings out the scariness of the mundane, but it also sometimes he just wants to show us the mundane, like how shitty a Pinto could be, and just the everyday world of advertising, and what a pain in the ass it is when it's really hot, and that marriages fall apart, and that they you've like the central conflict of the first half of this movie is the dad Vic is dealing with problems at work because of a really sort of strange and even slightly funny mishap where the breakfast cereal that he has written an award-winning campaign for is using a new red dye that has made kids all over the country frighten their parents because it looks like they are
Peeing
shitting blood.
blood,
Right, and peeing
basically.
blood. Yes, and it's a big PR nightmare. So that's number one. Is Julia, you pointed out that everybody's got a media job in Hollywood at this
Yeah, I was
in
going to say, please note that Danny Pintaro's father works in an ad agency in this movie, and his mother works in an ad agency in Who's the Boss, because the only jobs that the media knew about in the 80s were cops, doctors, lawyers, and ad agency people.
The
it's
ad agency angle of this movie is I would have less a problem with if it was taking place in any other universe other than the rural Maine universe of Stephen King. Like what
I
is
hadn't
a
actually thought about that. That's a
what
good
is
point.
an advertising exec doing living in like middle of nowhere Castle Rock,
Well, maybe
Maine?
that's why some of the marriage problems were happening, is that he was constantly having to travel to New York every
And I would
week.
have been fine if they had made more of a thing out of
Yeah,
that, but they don't. Like
That's a really good point. Yeah.
I'm
it's a funny point.
honestly okay with the way the marital problems are presented. It just seems like they're at a stage where they're so focused on being parents, they're kind of bored with each other, and that's a thing that happens,
Sure.
and it's realistic. And I even think the way she breaks it off after she realizes she's being kind of a-hole is like there's no real epiphany moment. She just kind of is like, hey, my husband's a really good dad, I probably shouldn't be doing this to him. And
Yeah,
so,
it's
Right.
not feeling good for her at that point. Right.
yeah.
But that's, I guess, why I didn't care for it, because it feels like an add-on, like, oh, we like that, like Jason was saying, it feels like it needs more, like they just needed more padding. So like, let's stick a story in here, because if it had been more relevant, because all we needed was for him to be out of town for the drama about her or nobody finding them right away, is that he's
Yeah.
out, like he's trying to call, so you didn't really need all of the rest of that.
Oh no,
um
you could cut it. I like it though, so I like that it's there. I wish that with Christopher Stone's character, actually
Hmm.
D Wallace's
Her
husband, which
actual
is kind of
husband,
funny.
yeah,
Yes.
right.
Yeah, is I wish that there had been a scene where he was confronted by Cujo. Like that is the
Yeah.
only thing that like they make such a show of him kind of with his crazy sort of stalker like behavior that she wants to break it off, and he's not really accepting no means no, and he slashes up her bed and everything, and
Right, and he tries to rape her, or maybe
yeah,
he rapes her, and
I
we
would have
don't.
been
It would have been yeah, great to see him get
get
attacked by
get
Cujo for
attacked by the
sure.
dog. And I think that's really either I feel like yes, maybe they should have exercised the affair stuff to trim the fat off a little bit, but
Or brought it into the main
brought
plot,
it into
which
the
yeah,
main plot.
exactly. I think that would've been great. That would've been a perfect way to tie the plots together, and then also, when I saw that gorgeous jaguar driving out to the farm, I was like, "Well, there goes the jaguar." I was like, "No, the dog's dead by the time he gets there."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "That's that." I hope that convertible has a has a top that we can put on.
I just want to report, by the way, I read this book just like you guys did. We're all Generation Xers here. We all read Cujo as kids, basically, if I'm understanding correctly, and that is because there was no such thing as young adult novels in 1981, as far as I can work out. So there's
Oh,
like
and
The
Pet
Outsiders.
Sematary,
And
the other
once
one.
you read The Outsiders, you're like, I guess I'm done with that. And so then you start reading Stephen King. And so there's like all of this like graphic sex and graphic violence, and Sheriff Bannerman's guts are spilling all over the place. And I think, I'm not sure, but I believe this might have been the first like grown up book I read, like, full on R-rated sex and violence
I
kind of book.
remember buying the paperback at our local Walmart, sitting down, waiting for, I don't remember what my parents were doing, but I was waiting for my parents to pick me up. And for some reason, it took a long ass time. And I
Mm.
read the entire book in one sitting. So that was like my first, I think, experience with a book that I would say, oh, that was a real page turner. Like
Yes.
I had to know what happened next. The weird thing about the book Cujo is that it's kind of a semi sequel to the Dead Zone, which of
Hmm.
course
Right.
is not all that stuff, and rightfully so, but all that stuff is exercised, removed
There's
for
a
the film
there's a
version.
vestige of it, which is that Bannerman makes it in, Sheriff Bannerman, and he dies. Although, he's a beloved. If you were into the TV series, Sheriff Bannerman is a beloved character who like sticks around for the entire Dead Zone TV series. But yeah, here he gets eaten by a dog.
Yeah, apparently, like the book mentions like Johnny Smith, and there's even an idea that the serial killer from the Dead Zone has possessed Cujo. That was something
Well,
that
that's
people.
a thing that Sheriff Bannerman thinks. He
Yeah.
just thinks it. It's an insane
Mhm.
thought that he has
Well,
when he's being
speaking
disemboweled by a dog.
speaking of insane, apparently Stephen King doesn't remember writing this book because he was so drunk. He was like so deep in his alcoholism. He's like, I don't
I
remember. I don't
That is
remember
so
writing.
strange to me
Maybe
because
maybe that is why he is able to enjoy, because Stephen King is quite opinionated about film versions of
Yeah,
his books.
he
So
likes this one
maybe that's why though, because he doesn't remember writing it, so he doesn't feel as
exactly.
precious about
He's
it.
he's not
it's
attached to
it's
it.
so good. I mean, I have to say, he may have forgotten writing it, but he certainly wasn't unconscious when writing it because it's really good. It has deep awareness of what drives people and what drives people poorly. While we're at it, I wanted to point out in this movie. Oh, the cinematographer, by the way, is Jan de Bont,
I
who,
know,
of course,
right?
what did he direct? He directed Speed, okay, and Twister, but he was the photographer of Basic Instinct and Hunt for Red
There
October and
is
Die Hard.
some cool camera work in this movie, and I don't know whether to credit Louis Teague or credit Jan de Bont, but like particularly, this is jumping way ahead, but particularly at the end where Dee Wallace is fighting the dog with the baseball bat, like the way they handle
Oh yeah,
that, by using the camera basically as the dog
right.
is really brilliant stuff.
When you consider
Yeah.
how unrewarding like POV monster shots often are in the movies, you never feel like it's cheesy here ever.
Well, it's also a great, like, you don't put an animal in danger.
Yeah.
You don't put an actor in danger in the same way. It's really smart to cut that out and you really think about all the logistics of it, and it works really well the way it's cut. It doesn't feel cheap like it might. There are times when something similar would feel like cheating or not feel as visceral. And by the time we reach this point, I mean, they used it at the right point too, because when that is used, things have gone really, really, really off the rails. This is a last ditch effort. Yeah, I thought that was really great as well. Really smart choices. In fact, I think they make a lot of smart choices as far as when to have stunts, when to cut away.
Yeah, the jump scares are amazing when the dogs are jumping on the car at various points.
Yeah.
Um, the the fact that it was pretty funny because there was one scene where, well, I think the first time Cujo is attacking one of them, and I was just like, this dog looks so excited to be attacking somebody because the tail was wagging like crazy. But apparently that was just they missed that one because the rest of the time they tied their tails to their legs so they wouldn't look so excited about attacking.
Yes.
I just thought that was really funny. But yeah, they did an amazing job getting the dogs to look really scary, even though they're like super sweet.
Well, that was exactly what happened. Oh, go ahead, Drew, please.
It's interesting to go from a movie where the protagonists are wolves to a film where the protagonist is a dog. And Saint Bernards, I think, are one of the few dogs that are large enough. They're friendly looking dogs, but like you cake enough mud and goo onto them, and they're like it pound for pound about as intimidating as the wolves from Wolfen. Like
it's a huge dog. The only thing you might get close is I mean, for a while Dobermans were the dog of choice in, for whatever reason, on especially TV movies, down to when you had a whole series of TV movies, the Doberman Gang. Like, I don't know how that happened, but like Saint Bernard, super huge. I mean, Great Dane would be the only thing that would come probably close to,
or like a Mastiff or something.
Yeah.
Is it a Doberman that they use in this movie that they put it in Saint Bernard clothing at one
I think
point to
that's
make it?
right.
Yeah,
That
there
sounds
was one
about
scene
right.
where they were trying to make it scarier than the
Oh
Saint
no,
Bernard.
it was Marmaduke. It was a Great Dane
No.
lab that was in a
Well,
Saint Bernard costume.
in the
Yes.
IMDb it said, I think it's a Doberman, but whatever, it doesn't matter. The
So
point is just that there's a different dog that's also.
there
Also,
is. Oh, go ahead, please.
Also, there's a few shots where they really make everything super goopy and terrible, with like green, stuff like it. That part is just that they chose their battles on when just to make things horrifying, and and the poor dog, it's rabid, so it's like that's what's kind of bizarre is I think all of us we're probably afraid of dogs a little bit more after this, which is kind of a shame. But Cujo, the friendly dog, doesn't want to be this way.
No.
And that's also horrifying that you learn how bad rabies can be when you read something like Old Yeller.
Yeah.
If you're traumatized enough to read that as a kid, it's a horrible, terrible disease. In fact, by the end of it, you kind of gotta just kind of hope that our mom isn't gonna die.
Yeah.
Because it's entirely possible that if she's been spending enough time, like that's it. Once symptoms set in, that's it. You're too bad.
Well,
that's also terrifying.
It seems like they're out there for a good amount, and she does definitely get bit. So, like,
yeah,
I don't know enough. Like, I mean, this is some weird Cuckoo Town movie version of rabies that seems to have a really, really aggressive. Like those symptoms start up pretty quick, but
right.
I don't know how, like, she's at least getting a lot of shots, like.
Oh, undoubtedly. I remember hearing all about those when I was a kid.
There's no doubt about that.
The super needles and all that stuff that you were going to have to do if you were bitten by a rabid dog. Our son was reading to us about.
Let's just look this up. How long?
While you're looking that up, I just wanted to spend a moment on the fact that in this movie we lose, and I mean maybe I use the word to lose likely, but we lose the narration of Cujo himself. in the book, Cujo is a voice and he is fascinating. It is so fun to spend time, and then not fun, but it's so cool to like spend time in the brain of a dog as told by Stephen King, as he sort of sadly starts to go crazy and blames the people around him for making him sick, and they deserve to be, but he's so mad, and he doesn't feel good, and he feels guilty. It's a poor dog, and he's a great character, and it is impossible. There's no way in hell you could turn it. I mean, I guess you could try it, but it's another high wire act, because if you blow it, if you figured out some way, like to have John Lithgow whispering the POV of Cujo over the top,
They they
it.
did that in Lessons in Chemistry, the TV show. Not as much as the book did, but they do give a voice to the dog in Lessons in Chemistry at one point.
Mm.
I didn't love it. I thought it was kind of weird. But then again, I thought it was kind of weird in the book too. So I don't know. It would be definitely way difficult to hear. Like it would just be
It
really
would be
sad.
it would be hard for it not to feel
Yeah.
like what's that comedy movie that recently Strays. It would be hard
Yes.
for it not to feel like the horror
Right.
version of Strays.
Yeah.
Well, of course,
It's
nowadays.
very difficult. Yeah.
Of course, nowadays we just get Chris Pratt to do it because evidently he does all the
Yeah.
voiceovers for
Well,
everything.
so rabies gestation takes at short in a human at shortest a week, typically 2 to 3 months, and at
Mm.
longest a year.
Hmm.
So
She's got time then.
she's got time.
So one of the interesting things, our son was telling us that we have much more effective medicine for rabies now than we did in 1982, and that's not all. We also today, as opposed to in 1982, have cell phones. There are so many things. Like if you were writing this book today, if I were that I if you or I were like, hey, or how do we write a script where some people are trapped on a farm with a rabid dog? You would either say, well, let's put it in the 70s or the early 80s before cell phones, or you'd have to do an awful lot of basically excuses for cell phones.
You know how I would do it to get rid of her cell phone?
How what?
I would have Christopher Stone show up, her get in an argument, and him take her cell phone from her.
Well, or just the fact that they're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
and
in the
the
middle
cell
of
phone has no
nowhere.
connection.
Yeah.
Because they're like at this weird ranch, that's like
It's also
miles and miles out of town.
also a mechanic.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I will say this to the movie's credit: this is one of the few horror movies where there is 100% no, like, everybody, when there's like a horror movie and the car doesn't work, everybody's like, why is the car conveniently not working right now? This, it makes sense because they're literally driving to the mechanic.
They're at the mechanic. Yeah, that's right. That's an excellent point.
On the things don't work list, like there's so much that a more modern car, like there's no way you could have cracked the window without the electricals working, all the electrical parts. And it sucks when your alternator goes out, by the way. When I was watching them, like, oh, that's terrible. I used to have a car I had to repair all the time. But the way you roll down windows, the way that the door handles are, all of that stuff is so much of that time period as well. Like, not that you couldn't do some of that now, but the way the car works is of that time.
Actually, the window thing, I think, would even be more stressful if it was
absolutely.
today, because let's say they already had the windows down for whatever reason, just to save the car, and then they can't put them back up because to get the dog to go away because the power's out.
All of it, you either cook or you or it's down. Like,
and actually, it was really cold in real life when they were filming, and so they're supposed to be super hot, but they were actually really, really cold.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt, but like I also, I really found the mechanic family is also the mechanics family is also feels very like it's that's a Stephen King family, but
Totally.
only because he writes the middle class and the working class so well. So like
So
all of
talk to
their
me about that.
interactions and all of their, well, you have a, it's not a great marriage.
Mhm.
In fact, this woman is trying, like, she doesn't warm up to her mom immediately, because I'm sure she was like, she's not used to, I don't think she's used to getting off that farm, that
Yeah.
that land very often. In fact, it's part of why she's going to leave once she takes some time off, once she wins the lottery. But just how it's that microcosm of their relationship.
Yes.
And hey, I won the lottery, I bought you this great thing that now you can work on cars better. And
Yeah.
his reaction of how he thinks about things and what he's going to do, like well, it's the best thing when your wife is gone is to start with infidelity and
Yes.
hang out with your loser friend.
So the
But all that stuff is really like that also feels like that's the Stephen King we know. And
yes.
he's so good at writing that. It feels like if you've lived anywhere rural, like you easily could know that family.
So
Hands
let
down.
me ask you about this, because I want to think about it for a second, and maybe you're totally right. But I was thinking about, when I mentioned prejudices earlier, the only one I was thinking of here, because this is an entirely white world that he's presenting. The only prejudice that is evident on the film is we got nothing but basically nice middle class people and basically nasty working class people. And
Are they nice
Well,
though?
yeah,
well,
I mean, they
they're
seem
not
to
great
be.
people, regardless.
Yeah,
fair, but they're
she's
they have,
straight up cheating on her hubby with
yeah, that's
the
true.
local carpenter. Like it's
And he's all in his ad, like you get the impression that he spent a lot of late nights in the ad campaigns and out of the house.
Yeah, but those are, so this is the prejudice at work, that those drawbacks are basically, they are aspects of the middle class condition. You're working too hard.
Sure.
They're people of polite society, essentially, whereas the working class people as presented here are not polite. They're mean to one another. They're angry. They're super angry.
Well,
But
I think that the husband seems angry. The wife just seems sort of
Yeah.
browbeat.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I'll buy that. Anyway, what I'm getting at is not whether any of that's real or not real, but like, what the hell is going on with Stephen King? Because we talked about this with Rob Zombie as well, right? That he has this tendency to write the working class as being pretty bad.
Honestly, I don't blame Stephen King here.
No.
I blame Steven Spielberg, even though he's not involved with this movie.
Mm.
Like like the whole idea of, here is a troubled family that through this, trepidation is going to reconcile. Which, you have the last shot in the movie literally is like the family embracing themselves,
Yes.
each other. Like, that feels very like warmed over Spielberg to me. And I'm not
And
saying that you're entirely wrong, that
Mm.
that there isn't this stuff in Stephen King, but the way the movie plays it out feels like something out of a Spielberg movie to me.
See, I also, Jason, in this movie, I didn't get the impression that, oh, look, the lower class are all angry, terrible people,
Mhm.
and the upper and the middle class are not, because again, they're just terrible in different ways.
They are
Like
fair. That's totally fair.
the mechanic is terrible in a way that somebody who he's not in the city doing mechanic stuff. He's a shade tree mechanic and he's getting
Yeah.
by. However, whoever sends people out to him,
Yeah.
like maybe he did. Who knows? He might have worked at that other guy's company and didn't like
Well,
ripping people off. But
for
like,
what it's worth, is he might be a crappy husband, but he seems to be honest enough at his job to
exactly.
where somebody
It's good.
recommends
Yeah,
him.
it's true.
Yeah, and again, also, in between both of those is the really nice mailman
Yes.
who has none of that. He's like probably the best character, like as far as like innocence in this.
Yeah.
He's probably the best
Yeah.
character, and he's definitely, you work. I mean, that's not a bad
Although
job, but he's not making as much money as ad executive guy.
he
Yeah.
is the mailman in Castle Rock, Maine, so he's probably a
Right.
serial killer.
Well, that's always a possibility, right? He's either a serial killer or definitely the nicest, most innocent person in the world. Maybe or may not be magical. You don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that to me, it didn't have the same like look at what rednecks are like. Like, you've talked about, I think you mentioned, Rob Zombie for some reason since the show that like, hey, here's these people out in the woods. They're all Chainsaw Massacre people.
Yeah.
For some reason. We don't know why. Like, I don't feel like
You don't think
that's
that's a
at
fair
work here.
comparison?
I
Oh,
don't
okay.
think that that's at work here because I mean, he this guy is also honest in his terribleness, right? Like his family problems and his drinking and his hanging out with his friend and talking about like, why shouldn't I get, have some fun
Yeah.
is not worse than I'm bored, so I'm going to cheat on my husband, or
Yeah.
I don't, I'm going to spend most of my nights away from my family because we got to sell cereal.
So in a
That's not
sense,
worse.
what you're pointing out is that, and I don't want to, I'm not being unduly harsh towards myself, but the prejudice is my own, that polite society gets a pass. Like that
Sure.
somehow the sins of polite society are more like within my world of,
Well, I also think there's different context because the family that we're following is the main character. So
Exactly.
they
yeah,
have more layers to them. Like, yes, she cheated on her husband, but she also is a fiercely protected mother who's
yeah,
willing to fight a rabid Saint Bernard with a baseball bat. So
yeah,
we're seeing more with here. Like if the movie was about the mechanics family, we probably would get more time spent with them,
yeah,
so they would be the ones with more nuances to them.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
The guy's a workaholic, but he's also really good at, trying to alleviate his son's fears of the monster that's in his closet. Like there's these are people with feet of clay, but like they're not monsters. And that's kind of what you need when your characters are your protagonists.
yeah, yeah.
um
No,
But
absolutely.
let's
Yeah.
also be clear. If he's a super great guy, we wouldn't feel like, you know what, it's okay that Cujo eats those the two guys, right? Like we're supposed to have some victims that we're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe not as bad as the setup. So don't
No,
forget that there is a plot
well,
element to, yeah,
the
man, that guy kind of sucks. So
the
get a Cujo.
mechanic, they never outright say it, but like there it does sort of feel like he might be abusive.
Yeah, no, exactly.
he
He's
certainly
Yeah.
definitely
reads
gonna
that
cheat on.
way.
He's definitely talking about cheating on his wife. Like, why can't
Yeah.
his whole deal is like, look, I work hard and I deserve to what I want. And he's at least verbally abusive, if not off camera, physically abusive.
He's
So
very similar to the Dolores Claiborne character that David Strathairn played, and occasional moments of niceness, but really just kind of a frightening pain in the ass to have to live with, and this is basically, you wouldn't be at all surprised if somehow he winds up being thrown down a well at some point, and
But
right.
like
We're getting attacked by Cujo,
yeah.
yes,
which he does.
Uh,
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like there's a plot, like, yeah, I don't feel as bad.
Although,
And that's the buildup.
I gotta say, even though the guy does have his creepy aspects to him, when he is attacked by Cujo eventually, it wasn't like I was watching Jason Voorhees, impale the
Sure.
asshole preppy guy,
yeah,
like I felt like a sense of like, because he loves the dog, like he is, you never get this.
Absolutely.
And so this guy is getting eviscerated by his beloved family pet. Like
yeah.
that's messed up in a way that a lot of
No,
80s horror is not often.
it is very Stephen King, though. That's the other thing that I wanted to mention is that, you know, this is the stuff that he loves to do. I was thinking about, we talked about Salem's Lot, which we've seen we've reviewed apparently a couple of versions of on this show, and Salem's Lot was his opportunity to say towns are made up of all kinds of people, they all have problems, and then horror can move amongst them. By the way, for the listener, we had a conversation over the weekend where we were talking about the new upcoming Salem's Lot, and we were talking about the fact that we have done on this show an episode where we reviewed the version of Salem's Lot with Rob Lowe, and I honestly do not remember that episode. I don't remember it. I literally
It happened.
it has it has been erased.
But
from
did you
my mind.
also what would be great is if while you're saying that you opened up a drawer and in it was a manuscript called like Fido.
Right?
You're like, I don't remember that episode, nor do I remember writing this book about a
Apparently I
dog.
wrote a book. Yes. No, but yeah, like apparently 100 or 200 episodes ago, we did an episode on the Rob Lowe Salem's Lot, which I hope that it left a better impression than that.
I seem to remember you kind of liking it, but it's been too long. I mean, we've done how many episodes of this show? You can't expect to remember every single one of them.
Yeah. Yes. Good.
Especially like if it's like two things with kind of the same plot, or in this case, literally the same plot. Because two versions of the
because
same
they shot
story.
the kid at the window. They shot that almost shot for shot. Like if you look at a screenshot of that, you cannot tell if you're looking at the Tobe Hooper version or the remake. And I challenge the new one that's going to come out on like Hulu or whatever it is going to have to deal with that as well. I don't know how you're going to frame that shot.
Well, apparently we just have to review it.
Right. And it would probably do well for me to go back and rewatch the previous one just for the hell of it.
Here though, the Stephen Kingness of
Thank you for saying here to get us back to the topic.
I got some stuff here. So we kind of talked about this during our opening thoughts. It was mentioned a couple times, but this is a Stephen King movie. It is not the same kind of creature feature type thing that we have. It is an animal attack movie, yes, but like this movie owes everything to its Stephen Kingness and almost nothing to Jaws. There is no like confederacy of experts teaming up to take it down Cujo. There is no Cujo isn't a big enough menace, like he's once somebody actually gets their hand on a gun, he's actually fairly easily defeated. Because he's just a rabid dog, and that is terrifying, but also, as you said, mundane. So I guess is like, did anybody have some sort of I felt a degree of whiplash going from the stuff that we have been reviewing to this, because this,
I suppose I didn't feel whiplash. I was just there for it. In other words, so I guess to that extent, it was just really refreshing. Like, a different world. Yes, I know this, as you pointed out. I don't know what exactly. If we were to list the elements of a Stephen King story, I'm not sure what they are, but I know that there are a bunch of them here. Which is the little town on the cliffs, the flinty New Englanders, the personal problems, the tiny scale. I mean, sometimes in Stephen King books he'll blow up the scale, so that Carrie.
But it's intimate. This is intimate.
Yeah.
And the fact that a bat is what gives Cujo rabies feels very Stephen King. Like it could have been like a skunk or something more, less.
Well, especially a bat that's in like a whatever that drainage ditch or whatever that thing is. I'm like, what? Do bats hang out in those?
I guess they do in Castle Rock.
I'm gonna go with in
Montecito, California is where it was filmed.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, we have signs all over here because we have the bat colonies. Like
bridge,
you don't
yeah.
pick up the bats.
Yep.
It's
No,
not.
I've
Not
definitely I
Yeah.
was in a place in Austin where there was a bat on the ground and it was like jumping around. It's like, oh no.
yeah.
Very strange.
And I'm not saying that a dog couldn't get rabies from a bat. It just feels much more
Yeah, it's so
horror
random
genre
and
specific.
small. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Jerry
with you
Harden,
there.
by the way, shows up. I just wanted to mention Jerry Harden shows up as a detective named Mason who dispatches the sheriff or vice versa. But regardless, Jerry Harden's there, and it's so funny. This is an actor who was every damn where when I was a kid. You know, he was Deep Throat on X-Files. He was in lots of movies. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He had a great Texas accent. He lives yet. So if you're listening, Jerry, I know there's no way in hell you are, but we love you. It was cool to see him show up here. Yeah. Uh, is there anything that we want to touch on before we get our final thoughts, or have we hit on most of the themes? I want to go back to Danny Pintaro. Oh, go ahead.
Does anybody know if how the dogs, how well they, so like I have a personal pet peeve. I don't really like it when people put dogs in costumes. And so like the fact that they had to put special effects makeup on the dogs, like while it is extremely effective in the movie, I do find myself wondering if the actual dogs that were playing Cujo, if they tolerated it
I
okay.
mean, they
Does
seem
like
to be having a
anybody
good time for two reasons. One is that they were wagging their tail so much that they had to tie the tails down, but also the foam concoction was sweet and delicious, and so the dog kept trying to like eat
lick
it.
it off?
So I don't know. I didn't. I haven't seen anything else about like the actual like when they had
I
to
just
recover
found
and all that
myself
stuff.
worrying
Yeah,
about the
sure.
Cujos, like if they were okay being made to look so, because a
We
human
were worried
being.
about the rabbit at the beginning. We're like, did they just
Yeah.
set a
Yeah,
I,
Saint
I
Bernard
was
after a
worried about
rabbit?
that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the rabbit, I as a rabbit owner, I was worried about that, but I've never heard anything about a rabbit being killed on this. It's just like usually that's the sort of thing that gets out, but like if a stunt dog was uncomfortable in, makeup, like a person can make a choice to tolerate
Yes.
makeup, whereas a dog does not really have that same
No, you're
level
absolutely
Sure.
right.
of agency, and it worries me. I'm
Yep.
sensitive.
No,
Uh,
I think that's wonderful. And I did have that thought about the rabbit too. I was like, I don't know how I feel about the ethics of filming a dog chasing a rabbit. I don't know. I just literally, but I don't know how it was shot, so I can't comment on it. The dogs I am not worried about because I haven't read anything and the dogs seem to be having a good time. Dogs are generally pretty good sports. If they don't want to wear a sweater, they're not going to wear it. They'll take it off.
yeah.
So
I am with you, Drew. I think that when I was watching it and noticing that and kind of thinking along the same lines, I noticed, and it may not matter, but if you watch how often it is in kind of what I would call like full makeup, it's not that often. In fact, I'd be more concerned about all that them having to manhandle a dog and have it fake being attacked and all that kind of stuff and how stressful that could be.
there was one injury,
As
and it was completely an accident of the dog. The dog was trained to lunge towards the stunt woman at the same time that the stunt woman lunges towards the dog. They're supposed to come close. The dog accidentally bit
oh
the
sure, I mean
girl.
I don't.
The
It's
dog wasn't
hard to
injured.
not.
The stunt woman was injured. Yeah. Well, I think she lowered his toy or something. I don't know. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
her nose got got
they
bit.
were
But that
able
was
to
the
reattach it, but that is a
that,
harrowing.
that wasn't the dog
Whoa.
part. So,
Ouch.
That's
Yeah,
awful.
yeah.
But yeah, I think I did in my head. I noted that there's eventually he ends up just kind of being kind of greasy all over,
yeah. It's
and
Yeah.
I think that
mostly
that's probably
egg
just like
white, I
the
think,
egg whites
basically.
and stuff. And so I was noticing like, oh yeah, but there's not a lot of shots in just full goopness in
Right.
my. So I mean, it's probably not great to have that, but I didn't. And the 70s are still not great for animal
Yeah.
animal shots. Like, there's all kinds of ways they were getting away
Yeah, it
with
was
stuff. I mean, even into the 80s, there's some
unsettled.
pretty terrible stuff. But I did wonder the same thing, but I also kind of noted the levels of the makeup and the way they did it seemed to be, I don't know, in my opinion, as best as you could. But I wasn't on set, so who knows?
Well, they also have mechanical dog for some of the attack scenes, and I thought that was actually a really good effect. And
Huh.
I didn't notice when it was.
Yeah, look. I mean, all of that looked, awful and scary. So
Mhm.
none of it felt like, hey, climbing that alligator. Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to mention Danny Pintaro just a little bit more. Just how much this kid has to just scream and scream and scream and scream, and then pretend, to be choking on his own tongue, and like what an amazing,
Yeah, his eyes
amazing young
roll
actor.
back in the back of his head, and he's
Yeah,
just like, and then
he's
he's like,
great. I
yeah,
had no
just all that.
idea that he was this good. I just didn't know, and I'm really impressed.
Mhm.
So like he, who's the boss? Never demanded anything this complex from him.
Yeah, the kid
So,
didn't have to scream a lot.
no, it's
I
it's impressive.
Although I do hope that even if a dog is nice and stuff, like this can't. I do wonder if there was some therapy may be involved eventually. Because I mean, it's regardless of how good of a child actor he is, he's still a child.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
there's a lot happening here that I hope he was okay about, because
Well,
it's
sometimes
a
what they
scary
did with
movie.
children, I don't know about with him, but with children is that they never were exposed to any of it. Like they only ever are screaming, just like, "Hey, now scream," but there's not like any jump scare or whatever. I don't know in this case how much of it
we'd have
was.
to ask him.
Yeah.
I think that he may still live in Austin, actually. Um,
Yes, if you guys see him
So,
around, just
oh
be like,
no,
"Hey,
according to what I'm reading, he moved back to California. So,
oh,
but for the
bummer."
longest time, he was an Austinite. So good for him. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, cool. All right. This movie also did not make people, I don't think, afraid of Pintos because people already hated Pintos.
Well, yeah, and Dee Wallace was like, "Never again. I don't ever want to see a Pinto again," which I thought was funny. We had a Pinto when I was a kid.
I
We
mean,
did
a
too,
lot of people were
Mhm.
like that. Only they didn't have a dog attack. They just
right?
hated it. It was just not a
We
good
did
dog.
have a very large German Shepherd, but the German Shepherd did not attack us.
There was the Pinto hatred was a running gag in pop culture all through my childhood. So much so that in Top Secret with Val Kilmer, there's a whole gag where the Nazis get killed because they collide with a Pinto and it blows up. And I'll never forget that.
Well,
Um,
I mean, the joke there though is that they did tend to catch a fire or explode if you hit them from the back. But in
yes,
Top Secret, it's the gag is it's barely touched,
it
like
just
the
goes
build up
dink.
and then ding, and that
Six
it's a good
Still
setup
explode, yeah.
actually.
Oh
But
my
but if you
god.
again, that's another one of those gags. Like if you didn't know, you just be like, what?
Yes.
His car
Oh my
exploded.
god.
But
Top
like
Secret.
if you
Oh
knew about the reputation of a Pinto, then you're like, ah, that's a pretty good gag.
boy, we got to watch this Top Secret. I haven't seen that
Oh,
in
it's still
25 years.
good. It's always good. I'm sure that it's probably not as funny to a subset of people who maybe only watch art house movies. I don't know. Maybe it's still funny to them too, but it hits me every time.
It might. I would be careful before showing it to like people of my kids' generation because they tend to find older movies problematic, and I'm sure that
Well, but they're also good sports about it. Like they'll be like, "Yeah, that's problematic," but they don't dismiss the
I
entire
mean,
work. So
this
they'll still find Airplane funny, even though there's some just really bad
I think
shots.
Top Secret has. I'd have to watch it again, but I think there's less of that in particular. Plus, Skeet Surfing's great. That's
yes.
that's an awesome musical number. There's so many that's peak sight gag theater right there.
No, I agree. I agree. Okay, but we've diverged once again. Let us bring it back and get our final thoughts and anything else that you want to call out in the movie that people might have missed or that we haven't talked about. But it's been so fun looking at this. Drew, what have we missed, and what are your final thoughts on Cujo?
I think that this is a pretty scary movie. I I I think if we undersold anything is that this movie's actually, if you're looking for a horror movie that actually is going to scare the bejeebus out of you, like this is pretty good in that respect. So, those who are of timid heart, beware.
Excellent. Julia?
Yeah, I mean, really, that the whole, like I say, the whole part with they're in the car is so suspenseful, not just because of the wonderful jump scares and just the drama of being like trapped in this car for days, but the fact that every time she tries to get out of the car to go to the house to like use the phone or to try to reach for the bat that's on the ground or anything, or to try to get the gun once the cop gets eaten by Cujo. Like, he immediately notices, like, he's never asleep. He always is just watching her and just waiting for the opportunity. And then when he finally does attack her, she manages to fight him off and survives, which is shocking because he manages to eat everybody else pretty quickly. But
Mm.
with her, she puts up so much of a fight and somehow survives that, even though who knows if she'll survive it later, but she survives it at that moment. So all of that was just so terrifying to me. I mean, and then again, the little boy just screaming and her not knowing how to, like he's screaming when it's kind of like, I guess, the quiet place, or whatever, where he's screaming and the dog is so triggered by noise. Like that's part of what sends him into a rage. So he's screaming. She's going, you have to be quiet. You have to be quiet. You're making him more upset. And then like he just, it's just, all of it was just so upsetting and terrifying. I thought it was very, very, very well done, and super scary.
That's wonderful. Tony, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it is, like I said, a harrowing movie. It's just once things kick off, it's something else. I mean, it does a really great job of presenting you with a tiny enclosed space that is scary for multiple reasons. Like, baking in a car is bad enough. You were just locked in a car, much
Yeah.
less a, Saint Bernard running around outside. And all of those moments of can you escape, how can you get away, and is she going to be able to save her kid, all that is just frightening, in besides just the horror parts of all of the attacks. It's well put together, well paced. It is really, I think this was one of the movies it definitely wasn't the first King novel I read. I can't remember what that might have been. It maybe Salem's Lot, because my grandmother had it.
Mm.
Possibly Pet Cemetery, actually, which is also its own terrifying book.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think this is the first one where I saw the movie and then went out and read the book just to see what the differences were.
Mm.
And it is a good watch the movie, read the book kind of experience, because the book does deepen things in the ways that we were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're firmly in horror, like Drew said, as opposed to eco horror. But I think this is a great, animal attack movie.
Yeah.
By a set of really good actors, and one of our favorite novelists, and the screenplay. The screenwriters doing the adaptation really kind of picked the important parts and made something good with it, which doesn't always happen with adaptations. So.
Thank you. Somehow, when I read this book, it was many years before I saw the movie, because I saw the movie in high school, and so that means it had been out for a number of years. But I read the book almost immediately when it came out, because I guess somebody got it for me for some reason.
I think I wasn't in line to see it because I wasn't as enamored. I was young enough where I was like, I don't really want to watch a dog attacking people. I think also I'd been like at a playground one time, I was chased by like a dog with mange.
Oh,
Which is
sure.
gross. Like mange is terrible looking. Like you don't know what it is if you're young enough.
Yeah.
Chase my brothers and I up a slide. Like we just sat there on the slide, hoping like, go away, dog. And hoping it doesn't run up the stairs of the slide.
Gosh. Yeah.
But all of that, I wasn't like, yeah, let me see the dog attack movie after experiencing that. So it wasn't until years later that I saw it. It was on cable. I'm sure it was like HBO or Cinemax, and then read the book not too long afterwards. But each time, the movie's solid.
Yeah. No, we caught it. We caught it on video cassette. I remember that in the late '80s. But yeah, I'm so happy that we watched this. This is basically. I'm always thrilled to go back into Stephen King territory. It's even this is I think a really strong King adaptation, but I got to say, even a lesser King is still a lot of fun for me. I like his themes, and so this was a really good time. I'm glad we had a chance to do it. I do not know what is next, so we will find out soon enough. But
Aren't we doing Ghostbusters?
oh yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Oh,
That's right. Okay, yes.
yeah.
Well, it's either Ghostbusters next
I think
or
it
something
is.
else, but I know the Ghostbusters is coming up,
Yeah, I
and
think
there's
Ghostbusters
also
is next.
another horror that we were discussing that's coming. So there's a couple new things that we're going to be seeing in the theaters, and
Mhm.
that'll be pretty fun. So we'll let you
Yay.
guys know more about it as we get to it. Uh, all right, but then let's get our endorsements. That would be whatever if you have anything. Um, I have to look at my notes to see if I actually have anything. If I don't, then you'll be spared my endorsement. But Drew, Julia, Tony, Drew, starting with you, what do you have for us this week?
I feel kind of weird because my endorsement is actually a trailer for an IMAX movie
Mm.
that's coming out. There's a documentary simply entitled T-Rex, which is,
Huh.
as you could imagine, about Tyrannosaurus Rex. But it's one of those sort of Animal Planet, Walking with Dinosaurs style documentaries where they're gonna follow a T-Rex around, and it looks really cool. I can't wait to see it on the IMAX screen. So looking forward to that.
Wow. Thank you very much. Julia, what about you?
I binge watched the Netflix series School Spirits,
Mm.
which is a fantastic show about a bunch of young people. It's like it takes place in a high school. So it's a bunch of young people and they are sharing space with a bunch of spirits of people who have died at that school, and our main character is trying to figure out, it's a whodunit, like our main character is trying to figure out what happened to her to cause her to now be among these spirits. And it's just a great show. It's really good as far as a whodunit. It's really good. The paranormal stuff is really interesting. Acting is fantastic. Writing is fantastic. So highly recommend.
Thank you very much. Tony, what do you got?
Yeah, so I've been watching a bunch of stuff. Masters of the Air is wrapping up, which I thought was really good. The completely made up adventures of Dick Turpin,
Oh, so good.
which is really good so far. I also new season of Girls Five Eva showed up on Netflix.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't
Which
wait.
is really
I
good.
didn't know it was a new season. I'm so excited. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't think so as well until Rain was like, "Hey, I'm watching this new season." It's like, wait, what? Not only did it make the switch to Netflix, it's also a new season. I thought that was
Don't
good.
they tell us these things?
I don't know why they don't. And I also saw Drive Away Dolls, which I don't think is going to be for everybody, but I enjoyed it a lot. And even if people say maybe it's a lesser movie, a Coen brother movie that's lesser is better than a lot of movies, in my opinion. I enjoyed it. Went to the draft house, had a good time. I think it's, again, probably not for everybody, but I thought it was cool. So yeah, and then I'm still loving what I'm seeing of Delicious in Dungeon, which is the closest thing to a D&D campaign feeling, like the kind of off kilter, oh, you decided to do that kind of the way D&D campaigns can go. I'm really impressed with that show. I need to read the manga because I've heard it's even better, which is used a lot of times the case. But yeah, so a lot of different stuff in amongst just kind of random, this shows up on TV, I'm going to watch it kind of stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't have anything to endorse. I've been very heads down, and so I promise to make up for it next time with maybe a couple things. So but yeah. Well, I do have this to say. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion of Cujo. If you have any thoughts about the world of Stephen King, or whether there are any elements you want to bring forward, come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you think. And I can't wait for us to be back really soon. I know Ghostbusters is coming up, but there's some other stuff that's coming up, and I don't even know what's literally in our next. So we'll let you know when we get there. Thank you, everybody. Be kind to one another. We'll talk to you soon.
Night.
Good night, everyone.